Hello guys, welcome to one new episode of Wild Travelers. Today I'm here with my good friend Hugo. He's a digital nomad and he's going to be telling us a lot more about what it is to be a digital nomad, how he started, and maybe he's going to provide some advice for some of you that are interested in following this lifestyle. Hugo, would you like to tell us about yourself? How old are you? How it all started for you and so on?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to your place. Pleasure.
Cheers.
Cheers to that. And long story short, my name is Hugo. I'm originally from Mexico. I was born in Guadalajara. I was born and raised in Guadalajara. I actually lived there until I was 20. And then I started basically hitting the road, just like Luis. I'm a language teacher. I teach English and Spanish, and been a nomad since basically 2019. Although I started earlier, we can touch on that later. But yeah.
But so far so good. You still enjoy everything that you've been doing ever since the start.
Yeah. I mean, my first experience abroad was in 2003 when I moved to the U.S. That was basically the first time that I moved outside of my country, and I really enjoyed it, right? And I guess that's when I started being a nomad without really being a nomad, because after that I just kept moving to different places. Now, I recently discovered that I am a specific kind of nomad, which is also funny. I was listening to this podcast where I heard the term slowmad, right? Rather than nomad. And that's basically what I like to categorize myself as, because I spent a lot of time in countries, right? Like in the US, I spent 3 years, for example.
Well, that doesn't mean that you are not a nomad, because you're still working the same way that you have been working since the beginning. I mean, you are working for yourself. You are a freelancer. You don't have these like obligations of committing to a job of someone else or another company. So I think you can still call yourself a nomad.
Absolutely.
I mean, you were in the US, but did you spend these 3 years in the same place? Maybe you moved around a bit?
I moved around a bit, yes. I lived in Texas, that's where I started. Then I moved to Georgia, the state. Then we'll clarify why later, but I'm saying Georgia.
Yeah, you always have to state the state. This is something that every time I'm Googling something about Georgia, the country, or the states, it's like there's nothing about the country unless you write country.
Georgia, the state, and traveled a bit. I went to New York. I did not live in New York, but I went there because it's one of those places. I guess it's like Paris, especially for someone coming from across the pond. It's a place that you've always seen on television, and when you finally get to cross the pond, you want to see the Eiffel Tower, right? So
I don't really think that New York would be like a good choice for a nomad, especially when you depend on your own income. I mean, of course, we have nomads of different backgrounds and so on.
Different budgets,
But New York, it's something that probably you'd avoid as the normal digital nomad.
Yeah, and back then, like I said, it was 2003. So, Airbnb didn't exist.
Yeah.
This remote jobs, not really. I mean, the internet was already booming, but not in the way it is booming now, right? So, I mean, it was a different kind of nomadic lifestyle, because you had to go somewhere, find an apartment the old way, basically by asking around if somebody has a room to rent, stuff like that. You had to have actual jobs in the place. Right. Whereas now you just can be anywhere because you can work online. Right. It was very different back then. So it was a different nomadic lifestyle, basically.
Yeah, but still you could still find some options. Like, for example, I have a few friends that do work away, which is like, it's a way of being a nomad.
Exactly.
So usually you just go and you stay from like very short stays of just a few days working for a place, let's say a hostel or a farm, and you stay there from, let's say, sometimes only 2 nights, sometimes you're going to be there for 2 years. You never know what's going to happen, but obviously now it's easier. I mean, you are teaching and you're doing it online.
Absolutely, yes. That's another thing that I stumbled across basically by accident, because in maybe it was 2016, I went to Split, Croatia on vacation. Like I was there. And then I met this guy who is American but from Ecuador. And he was teaching online at the time. But back then it was like a new thing, right? Like, and that's the first person that kind of planted the seed in my head, like, oh, you can actually do this online, you know. So I waited a few years because at the time I was living in Barcelona, I had an apartment there. Every single item in that apartment was mine, the washing machine and everything. So you can imagine when I left, I had to sell like every single
or
thing.
give away to your friends and so on.
Yeah, a lot of things that I ended up giving away. Yeah.
This is something that I always think about. Like whenever I start this digital nomad lifestyle, the one that you are leading, as you know, I am trying to get rid of some of my stuff, and I'm always thinking, oh gosh, like I really wanted these things back then, and I spent money on them, and now I'll just get rid of them. Maybe I can't even sell them. Maybe I'll just leave them with someone. Maybe I'll never see these things again, because you never know. Like I don't know if you still have like something back in Mexico or in Spain with some friends, maybe with family, but
Yeah, that's a good question. I have a bicycle. That's all I have in a storage room in Spain, and that's because a very good friend of mine sold it to me, and it has kind of like a sentimental value, right? Because I haven't seen this friend since he sold it to me. So that bike is in a storage room. It has crossed my mind so many times to sell it, but I never do. Like, it's just in this storage room there. So, and actually it's a positive thing when I go back to Spain, because I can just go get it. And in Barcelona it's so easy to move around on a bike. So I just cycle around the city. It's quite fun. You know?
But nowadays it's also easy to transport your bicycle to another place. Let's say, like Flixbus, you only pay €5 for a bicycle.
Yeah.
So maybe you can take one all the way from Spain to Bulgaria or anywhere else. I mean, if you are in Europe.
Exactly. Yeah. But then also that's the thing, and that's the things that I like to pay attention to, and I'm sure you do the same when you go to different places. Not every city is like bike friendly, right? So imagine like I could travel with my bike, it would be a little bit more expensive. Yes, sure. But then for example, like Belize, Belize, Georgia.
Yeah.
That is not bicycle friendly. There's no way, right? Sofia, I would.
At least it's like not ups and downs here. Like there's no hills in the city.
Yeah.
I mean, the city center is pretty flat.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't call it like proper for bicycles either. I mean, compared to, let's say, most of the countries in Western Europe or in Scandinavia, it's still very far away from those standards.
Oh yeah. And also like another thing about Spain that I would definitely miss here is that drivers actually acknowledge you when you're cycling. Like they're part of the cycling culture in Spain, right? So imagine in Belgium, Holland, this place is like a whole different level. But in Spain, like they acknowledge you. Here, I wouldn't be so sure about that. Like I don't think drivers are ready to acknowledge cyclists the way they do in other countries, for example.
Also because they are not cyclists themselves, and there are many reasons why. I mean, the infrastructure is not ready. The country is very mountainous, not the city, but the country in general. Mm-hmm. And there's also the fact that, I don't know why, but in many countries, this also happens in Georgia. People really rely on their cars to move, even if it's like a kilometer.
Yeah.
I used to do the same back in Portugal. I mean, I moved here, I always had a car, and I started walking when I moved here, and for me it was strange at first. I was like, oh God, now I have to go to the office, like on foot, or take the metro. Like I took maybe the metro 2 or 3 times in my entire life in Lisbon. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was something new here.
Yeah. For me, it was kind of like that was part of the culture shock when I moved, because after the US, I went back to Mexico for a few months, and that's another thing that probably happened to you as well. Like when you go back home after being away for a while, it's just not the same anymore, And what I mean by it's not the same anymore, it's so hard to readapt to that environment. I mean, you obviously left because you were not really happy there to begin with, right?
Yeah.
But then when you go back, you're just like, wow, like there's no way I'm gonna readapt to this. So you're just thinking about, you're looking for a escape route, let's say. And that's when I came to Europe, and like in the US, you drive everywhere. But really back to the car.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way in most states to take public transportation.
Yeah, and then I realized that in most European cities, it's kind of the opposite. I mean, obviously, a car is a what to call it, like it's comfort, right? Mm-hmm. But then in most European cities, I realized that you don't really need a car. right? Like I mean, like in Barcelona, for example, like a car is more money because you have to pay for a parking spot, insurance.
If there is a parking spot.
Yes.
By.
No, that's what people do. They pay for private ones,
Yeah.
which is like another €100 apart from your rent and everything, right? So yeah. Do I need a car? Hell no, I don't need a car. You know.
No, definitely. And yeah, like this whole thing, every day that passes, I feel like that I have too many things. But for you, like, do you have everything like in a suitcase, in a backpack? How does it work?
That's it. Yes. You know, that's another thing that when you leave your apartment, for example, then you realize how much you accumulate, right? Things and stuff. When you're a nomad, I guess there are different kinds of nomads. I travel with one single suitcase. It doesn't take a lot, basically. So I never surpass the 25 kilo line.
So you have your life in 25 kilos.
Basically. Yeah, basically.
Nothing else, except for the bicycle. Doesn't fit.
Except for the bicycle that is not even with me, right? But yes, yeah. It's 25 kilos, and that's another funny thing is like, because like I said, I'm a slow man, right? Like for example, like I come from Georgia now. We met initially when I just first moved there in Kutaisi, right?
We had about like 3 days difference or something when
Something like that,
when I traveled
yes.
there.
Yeah,
we did the same route exactly,
Pretty
all
much.
the way to Thessaloniki, flying over to Kutaisi, hitchhiking from Kutaisi.
Was it you that went there first, or was I?
You went first.
I went first.
I got there 2-3 days later.
Yes. Yeah. So you know, it was 8 months in Georgia, and whether you like it or not, even if you're a nomad, you still accumulate things. So this is another thing that I recently noticed. Every time I leave a country, I had to leave something behind. It might be something stupid, but I always leave something behind, right? Like even, for example, like in Georgia, I didn't leave anything behind, but when I was in Istanbul, just about to come here, I just realized that my tennis shoes were like messed up. They were just like messed up, right? So it's like, yeah, do I want to keep carrying them because I had a new pair? No, so they stayed in Istanbul, you know. So I always leave something behind, so you can't accumulate things.
Especially shoes, it's like heavy, difficult to carry.
Yeah,
I mean, I always travel with whatever I have on my feet. I don't know if you remember in Georgia, because I was going to Kazbegi, and I did it with Converse All Star. There was snow. And so it's just like the thing, I always try to avoid like this extra weight.
Yeah. Actually, you know, it kind of sounds stupid, but sometimes when it comes to shoes, I like to, you know, kind of think of their trajectory, right? Like for example, like, oh, I bought this tennis shoes in Spain, and after that I've been to France, I've been to this, so these shoes have basically been in those countries and now die in Montenegro, for example, right? So that's where I throw them away. So, you know, it's kind of stupid, but I like
a funeral.
Yeah, I like to think about it that way. Yeah.
So in regards to this, like not only like carrying things with you, but what would you say that are the most important things you carry with you, other than your laptop, obviously, because you need to work? Are there like, let's say, 3-4 things that are not disposable?
Yes. I guess, you know, every nomad is going to tell you like different things that they're attached to. In my case, obviously, I would say let's start by the basic. For example, like I always need a jacket, whether I'm moving to Thailand or you know whatever. Like I always have a jacket with me because you never know, right? Shorts and pants, like a nice combination, 3-3, for example, 3 pairs of pants, 3 pairs of shorts, t-shirts, shirts, like. I like bottom shorts because I'm a teacher and sometimes I visit schools in the countries where I'm at, so you need a little bit of presentation. A pair of shoes for the same reason, right? Like if I have to go from casual to formal, I need those shoes. And the thing that I probably carry, few things that I carry and that might be unnecessary for other people is like a pair of boxing gloves because I like punching bags when I go to the gym.
So they're always with you.
Yeah, and they take up a lot of space, right? But they're non-negotiable. Like I have to have them with me. Jump ropes as well, which is I like jumping rope. Yes, and I have also a TRX. I don't know if you know what that is.
I have no clue.
It's that thing that you attach to either a tree or a door, and you can do home workouts.
Oh, okay.
It's called TRX. And that thing is actually heavy. I mean, that thing is like, it's a little bag like this, but it's like 5 or 6 kilo. And you know, when you travel on this cheap airlines,
It's like
I'm not gonna-
20% of your suitcase.
pretty much, right?
Wow,
So
so-
yes, so I always get. I'm not gonna mention any brands or names here, but like these airlines, when I check in my luggage, I usually exceed the weight by
23
1
kilos and-
yeah, it's 1 kilo, 1.5, right? And in most cases, they just give you a little slap on the wrist. You know, they're like,
Yeah.
okay, next time, you
Yeah.
know, yeah.
There's never a next time.
Yeah, yeah. Except for once in Barcelona, where the girl actually made me reorganize my whole thing because you know she wouldn't let me on the plane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at least, well, these are your things, and I suppose that you use them because there is like, as we were speaking the other day, that if there's something that you don't use for like an amount of time, it means that you don't actually need it. But I suppose that you use all of these very often. Like you wear the gloves every time you go to the gym, so it's not something that you do once every 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Exactly. Yeah. It's when you're traveling with 25 kilos, your life basically
Mhm.
is 25 kilos. Then yeah, it better be things that you use,
Yeah.
right? Because otherwise, you know, you're just dragging things that you're not using. What's the point, right? Yeah.
How many countries do you feel like that you've lived in? Like, because obviously, like you've lived in Spain, you've lived in the US, but all these countries where you've spent like a few months, how do you determine that you have actually lived there and that you are not passing by?
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Actually, now I just remember that on my Instagram I keep like
The flags.
putting the flags
Yeah.
where I consider that I lived in. You know.
Mhm.
And it's a good question because, like, for some people, it's a matter of time, right? Like, oh, you have to spend, like, you told me, like, a friend of yours said 6 months, right?
Yeah.
For me, it is about time, but it's also about what you actually do in the country. For me, that is more important than time. Meaning that, again, I'm gonna give you a very simple example, but the reason why it's simple is because I wanna like separate it, right? If you tell me that you go to Barcelona and you had paella on La Rambla and then you just went to La Pedrera and Sagrada Familia and took a few pictures, well, you were a tourist there. You're not living there, you know? That you didn't do anything the locals do there, right? Now, did you have to go to the hospital there, you know? Did you have to deal with doctors in a language that you don't speak? Did you have to go find stuff that you needed? In my case, just a quick example, like in Georgia, I needed firewood because I had a fireplace in my apartment. And the only place where I could get it was this place called the Farmer's Market. The name speaks for itself. It's like no one there spoke English. It was like, not only was it difficult to find, it was difficult just to find the wood, you know, because it's a huge market and like most people are in their 50s there, Georgians, right? So how are you going to communicate with them? Good luck with that, right? So for me, those challenges, and if you overcome those fears and those challenges in a country, you can actually say, I lived here.
Okay.
You know?
So from your perspective, you have to do things that the locals do,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
going through the same struggles as them, whether it's bureaucracy or just buying firewood.
Yes.
And there's a situation about also like the visas and the stays, how long you can stay there, let's say.
Exactly, yeah, because we spoke about it earlier, right? Like some countries give you 30 days, you know?
Yes.
That's not a lot of room to basically say that you live there, right? It's not a lot of time, so.
I'm about to go to Transnistria and I'm supposed to be given only 24 hours if I make it. So
What can you do in 24
of course I don't think that I can say that I live there. Obviously not.
Yeah,
I don't have any idea.
Yeah.
But don't you feel like maybe one of the things about saying that you live there, it's because you're going and you don't know exactly how long you're going to stay. You're just going. There is like no way out. Like you don't have a return ticket, you don't have anything. You're just going. So maybe that would also work into the fact that you live there.
Yeah, and that's also the beauty of having actually the possibility to choose how long you're going to stay in one place, right? Because then, you know, if you have a job back home, then, well, they're waiting for you, right?
Of course,
So if you're working online, which is my case, then you decide, right? And that's another thing that I talk to with other nomads is like, you know, that's a common question between nomads. It's like, hey, like when you go to a new place, do you book for like 2 months, 3 months? And no,
Nah.
I book 1 month at a time. Why? Because I might not like the place. You know,
Of course.
I might be sick of it after
You
1
might go
month.
to a different city anyways.
Yeah.
Like you were doing in Georgia.
Yeah, yes, yeah. So in Georgia, it was like, for example, like in Batumi, it was like 3 months. Kutaisi 3 weeks, Batumi 3 months, and then Tbilisi almost 5 months. So yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like, what type of advice can you tell people that are looking at us and the people that also follow your YouTube channel? What type of advice can they take from you, as in like, how do you feel prepared to finally go? You know, like, no one is ever prepared. What can you tell us about that? Like, from your perspective, like, when did you feel ready? I mean, you've been doing this for quite a few years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the truth is that even when you're doing it, you never feel ready, right? Like I mentioned earlier, like you're moving to a new country, and there's always this voice in the back of your head saying, "What if next month 4 clients of yours decide to leave?" You know, then you're gonna lose 30% of your income, and you're gonna be in a country where you cannot really work because you're not allowed to work.
Yeah, you are a tourist.
Exactly. So that fear will never go away, right? So if you want to do it and you don't want to do it, I mean, and you haven't done it yet because you don't want to leave that like security, like your job, your apartment, etc. There's this paralysis by analysis, right? And people just set this like goals. I'd say when I say 5,000. That would buy me enough time and money to start my nomadic lifestyle. And then they get to 5,000. No, you know what? That's not enough because inflation and all this thing. So not 7,000. I'm not saying don't plan. I'm not saying that, but plan. But you know, there will never be a perfect time. And even when you're doing it, there's never a perfect time, right? Like I've been doing it since 2019, and I still find myself doing these things. For example, like, I was supposed to go to Turkey in January, and I went in February. Right? Why? Because I wanted 1 more month to save a little bit of more money, you know, and I mean, I needed a passport and everything. I was going to spend more money in Turkey, but I postponed it because I was not sure, you know, so it never goes away, you know. So, but that would be my advice. Plan meticulously, but do it if you see the opportunity to do it without really analyzing too much.
Okay, so from Hugo's advice, just do it. Don't overplan, don't overthink. Just hit the road and things will figure themselves out at some point.
Things always work out. That's a good one. Yeah, things always work out one way or another.
There's always like a silver lining in everything that happens, even if it's something bad. Just like he was saying, you may lose like a client or two, but maybe you're gonna make a few new clients. Like, you are on the road, so like there's like also more room for networking and so on, meeting like a lot of new people with similar interests, or maybe even interests that are like totally different, but you may eventually develop some desire to learn more about it. So I suppose that every time we are on the road, we learn something new. Like,
absolutely.
Always, like from someone, even when the people do not speak English. And that's something that I wanted to ask you, like, because we were speaking just like a couple of weeks ago, and he was in Ankara before coming to Bulgaria, and I've been to Ankara myself, and nobody speaks English.
Yeah, probably.
Obviously not Spanish as well, or any language that you speak. How do you feel there? Because you spent 1 month, right?
A little bit more, a month and 1 week. Yeah.
Did you feel lonely at any moment because like you don't really have anybody with you? And
yeah, I mean, I did, and that's another thing about nomadic lifestyle, right? Like, you're gonna be alone, like, for periods of time, basically, because especially when you move to new places, you have to start all over again, you know, make friends and stuff. In Turkey, for me, it was like, to be very honest with you, it was like a second lockdown. It was like a second COVID pandemic, right? Because I was basically just, with the exception that I could go to the gym, etc., right? But it was basically gym, home, right? And I mean, on the weekends, when I don't work, I was going out, you know, eating the food and checking out places and stuff like that. But even in this place where like nobody speaks the language, because I swear to God, I met one Nigerian girl that lives there. Well, she speaks English, obviously, and one Turkish guy at my gym that his English was like decent. This is in a period of 5 weeks, right? But even so, even when you cannot communicate with people, like my last week there, I just realized that I had a quote unquote social circle in a very strange way, right? My street was full of like restaurants and places.
Everyone knew you.
I always go to the same places. That's just me, right? If I go to one place and I like the food and I like the people, I just keep going there, you know? And my last week there, I would just walk past the restaurant and, you know, just say hi to people. We don't understand each other, but we know each other, right? So that makes it, you know, like it's a level of being social without really going deep into conversations because we cannot talk to each other, right?
Yeah, of course. But still, you kind of feel like some warmth from the people.
Oh yeah. And the people, like, you know, they remember your name, they remember where you're from, right? Like, so I would walk into a restaurant and say, oh, here comes Mexico, you know?
Yeah.
Just, they don't probably know my name, but they know where I'm from, you know?
Yeah, I still have to experience something like that a month or more in a place where nobody understands me. I've had like a few moments while traveling where I've been to places where nobody could understand a word of what I said, and I felt lonely because there were not many people. I remember I was once in Estonia in a place named Parnu, which is a summer resort. But I was there way before the summer, and there was absolutely nobody. I don't even know what I was doing there because there was absolutely nothing to do because people go there to swim. I mean, and I was just there. I felt so depressed. It was maybe my most depressing day in my entire life while traveling. That's why I was like quite keen about asking you like how was the whole experience in Ankara, and not only in Ankara, other places that you've been where nobody speaks like the language.
Yeah.
So people, if you're gonna be digital nomads, try to at least learn a few words of the local language. That's always like necessary. And
absolutely.
Yeah. I suppose that after 8 months in Georgia, you managed to work your way around some words and greetings.
Like, you know, at least you know how to say hi, how to thank people, and stuff like that. There's always this barrier, especially with the locals that don't speak English, right? Or
the older people and.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And like also that's another thing. And if you travel, don't take it personal. It would be like, not everybody's gonna be nice. You know, not everybody has the patience to like try to understand you, right? Like you might come across the woman that is just having a bad day. She works at the supermarket. She makes no money there. She's burned out, you know. And then the last thing she needs is a foreigner that doesn't speak the language.
Yeah,
that's the last thing she needs. So she's gonna be rude, right? And you just learn how to not take these things personal, right? Or like not to like pinpoint one country. Like, oh, people are rude here. It's like, not really, you know. It's just gonna be like that.
Yeah, you have to learn to adapt to your surroundings. Sometimes it's difficult. Some places are easier than others, definitely, but it is part of being a nomad, especially when you spend long periods as a slow nomad, as it says. Well, Hugo, I think this was a very good interview.
Definitely.
It was very good to have you here. It's good to have you back in Bulgaria. I don't know for how long, but we're gonna definitely meet maybe next week or so when I come back from Moldova.
Yes.
And well, I don't know if you want to tell anything else to the camera, to our viewers. As I mentioned before, I'm going to be sharing here Hugo's Patreon and his YouTube channel. I don't know if you want to leave anything else, like your Instagram channel or so on, or if it's more private. I know that you keep it private.
I keep it private, but if people send me like friend requests, I usually accept them, unless it's one of those like, oh, do you want sexy nights and stuff, then I'll accept that, right? No. I get a few.
That's what he's saying right now.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But if you look normal, if it's a normal profile, I'll accept you.
Alright, you're gonna find all that information down here on our description also. If you want to support Wild Travelers on Patreon, feel free to do so. The link will also be posted down on the description. And well, this is the first episode with Hugo, but maybe not the last. Maybe we're gonna meet again. Well, thanks a lot, and you almost finished your beer.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
Bye guys.
Thank you guys.
Thanks for watching.
Bye bye.